Okay, so at the top of your new clean page in your notebook, you should write the title, Chapter 1, Lesson 2, and today's date. Every time you take notes, you write the date. So you should have Chapter 1, Lesson 2, and the date, August 19th, 2020, at the top of your clean page. And then you can put it to the side and look at page 32. Okay, so page 32 starts Chapter 1, Lesson 2, and it is called Classifying Living Things. So we're going to talk about how we classify or group living things. Read the Look and Wonder box to yourself as I read it out loud. More than 2 million different kinds of organisms live on Earth. What kind is this? How could you find out? Organisms is another name for what? Victoria? Michaela? Zari?
Living things.
Living things. Organisms are not cells, otherwise we would be made of millions of organisms. When we are not made of organisms, we are an organism. Living things are the same as organisms. That was one of our vocabulary words. So, they're asking, what kind is this on the background of page 32 and 33? Well, with millions and millions of organisms, it would be so hard to find out. Open the book all the way, please. You don't need to be touching the book the whole time, because then it just becomes a plaything instead of a textbook. But because of the way that scientists classify or group things, we can more easily find out. Let's go ahead and turn the page and read to us the main idea. Carla, make sure you unmute yourself and read out loud. Read loudly, I mean.
Living things can be divided into 6 kingdoms. Members of each kingdom can be grouped into epithet,
Phylum,
phylum, class, order, family, genus,
genus,
and species.
genus, not genius,
Okay, genus and species.
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 Good. Okay, so that's the main idea. That's what we're going to learn about. They're classified, living things are grouped into 6 kingdoms, and then they're grouped even further until we get down to one organism. Okay, Carla, go ahead and read at the top of page 34.
Yes, ma'am. How are living things classified? Have you ever tried to sort laundry? How do you do it? You might not have known, but sorting laundry is a way of classifying items. When you classify, you place things where that shares property together in a group.
So think about laundry. If you do your laundry, or if your mom does your laundry, or your dad, or your grandma, or whoever does your laundry, do they just throw everything in the washing machine at once? All different colors, all different types of clothes, everything. Do they just take the basket of all the clothes, everybody's clothes, and throw it in the washing machine? They probably don't. If you think they do, try watching next time. Usually what they're going to do is they're going to separate it or classify it or group it by color. So they may put all of the things that are dark colors in one pile, all of the things that are light colors in another pile, and maybe all of the things that are white in another pile. They also might classify, group, or sort. Those are 3 words that mean pretty much the same thing. By what type of item they are. Maybe they put all the towels in at one time. They put all the nice clothes in at another time. And then they put like the play clothes they don't really care about in at another time. If you think, no, that's not true, watch next time. I bet you'll realize that you're wrong. And if they don't, well then, I don't know how your clothes will come out looking nice. Because I know if I don't sort mine, they all look like poo-poo. Because then all the dark things make the light colored things really dingy and dull looking. The towels leave little pills of cotton all over everything. That's a way of classifying or sorting. You put things in groups. Well, the same thing happens with living things. Otherwise, we just have this huge group of living things, of 2 million living things that we have no idea what to do with or how to sort or how to find what something is. Thank you, Carla. Go ahead and read next. Michaela. Make sure you're following along. Use your finger to help you read. It'll also help you so that you know exactly where we are. Oh, yeah. Yeah, put on your face shield so that you can take your mask off. I keep forgetting about that. Eventually, it will become habit. Quickly, please. And read loud like you're yelling.
To classify, you have to decide what characteristic to use to define the group for.
Remember, when you get to a period, you pause. It means it's the end of a thought. They're starting a new one. Sorry, please don't do that. It's very distracting.
For example, you can sort laundry by color. Living things can be organized in groups too.
Good. So, in order to classify things, first you have to figure out how you want to sort them. You have to define the groups. If I'm trying to put all of my laundry in a pile, or in groups, I'm not just going to start putting, okay, this goes here, 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 this goes here. First I have to figure out, okay, I'm going to put all the white stuff here. Then I'm going to put all the dark stuff here. Then I'm going to put all the brightly colored things here. So first you have to define the groups. Why are you putting one animal in this group, and one animal in that group? Why are you separating the plants from the animals? That's what you have to think first. Okay, Michaela, keep going.
Trim.
Pull the mask down while you read.
Trim. To classify organisms into large groups, scientists study many trines.
You already read that word.
A trine is a...
No, you already read that word. It's not train. You read that word.
Trine.
Look at the word. Use your finger, point at it. You read it when you read the title, the subtitle. It's the same word.
A trine.
Where's the I? Is the I before or after the A? If an I comes after an A, what does that sound like? A-I. What does that sound like when you put those 2 letters together? A. So, read that word.
Trine.
Is there an N? You got to pull your mask all the way down. Is there any N? So should you be saying an N sound? Tray. Tray. Stop. Tray. No, stop. Listen. Tray. Put those 2 sound together. Traits. There you go.
A trait is a characteristic of a living thing.
Good. So that's our first vocabulary word. Remember, the number goes on the left side of the pink line. The word and definition goes on the right. So what's our first vocabulary word, Michaela?
Trait.
Pull it down.
Trait.
Traits. And what is a trait?
It is a characteristic of a living thing.
A characteristic of a living thing. If you are humming, please, please stop. A trait is a characteristic of a living thing. A characteristic is just something about that living thing. Like a trait of humans is that we have hair. That is something that we all have. A trait of humans is that we have fingers that separate and move. Things like those are traits. Okay, thank you, Michaela. Read next, Ethan.
I'm not done with that.
Well, when you're ready. Okay, and if you cannot hear him, Ethan is just going to read the rest of page 34 for those of you at home.
Scientists
Loud, like you're yelling. Pull your mask down to your chin.
Scientists look at body form and how an organism gets food. They observe if it moves from place to place. They also study the number of cells if the cell has a
Nucleus.
And cell parts.
Pause. So those are just some of the things that they look at in order to sort these organisms into groups. Do they move from place to place? How do they get food? What does their body look like? How many cells do they have? Does that cell have a nucleus? Does it have a cell wall or chloroplasts? Those are some of the things that scientists look at in order to put organisms into groups. Read that last paragraph on page 34, Ethan.
Okay. For many years, scientists could not agree on a way to classify living things. People often use different names to describe the same organism. Over time, a system of classification came about.
So before they classified, one scientist may find this organism and call it Bob. That's this thing. This thing is a Bob. This animal is now a Bob. Well, then another scientist, miles and miles away, finds that same type of organism, but that scientist is like, well, I guess I'm the first person to find this. I'm going to call it a Jim Bob. So we have two animals or two organisms that are exactly the same, but because there was no system of classification, they have two different names. And so then everybody thinks, hey, I'm the first person to find this. But were they? No. They weren't. But they don't know that because there is no system of grouping or classification or letting everybody know, hey, this is this type of animal or organism. Look at the bottom of page 34. Look at that picture. It says, mushrooms are fungi, not plants. Fungi do not make their own food. Well, right now that might not make too much sense to you because you haven't read the next page. So keep that in mind. They're calling mushrooms fungi, but not plants. Okay, thank you, Ethan. Go ahead and read on page 35, Victoria. Make sure you're following along, guys, because if you're not and you don't know where we are, it'll be a consequence. Victoria, pull your mask down and start over from the beginning.
6 kingdoms. Scientists divide living things into 6 kingdoms. A kingdom is the
Okay, so we found our second word. Remember the 2 goes on the left side of the pink line. The word and definition go on the right. What's our next word, Victoria? Kingdom. And what is a kingdom?
It is the largest group into which organisms can be classified.
Good. The largest group into which organisms can be classified. When you're finished writing, Victoria, keep going. It's in your book, too. I'm copying it directly from what you said, which is directly from the book. So if you can't see it up here, it's right there in the book, okay? That goes for everybody.
All the members of the kingdom share the same basic traits.
So that means the largest group, the first group that scientists put an organism into is its kingdom. How many are there? How many kingdoms are there? Michaela? 6. There are 6 kingdoms. So that means whenever a scientist finds a new organism, they're going to look at which kingdom it fits into before they figure out anything else about where it goes. Victoria, keep going.
Plants have their own kingdom. So, there are so many kinds of bacteria we get 2 kingdoms.
So there's so many types of bacteria that they get 2 kingdoms. Out of 2 million organisms in existence that we know of, there are so many that they need 2 kingdoms to contain all of the bacteria. That's a lot of bacteria. Keep going.
There is also a kingdom for roaches.
I don't know. Is that what the pronunciation key told you it said?
Protists,
Tis. That is an I, not an E. Protists.
and one for
It's like I. It rhymes with I. So what is it? Fungi or fungi. Either way is correct. Smith, make sure you're on the same page with us.
The chart shows which traits the organisms in each kingdom share.
Good. So, let's look at this chart at the top of page 35. We know there are 6 kingdoms. Well, how many columns with organisms do we have here, class? 6. So each of these columns with a picture at the top is one of the kingdoms. So first, we have ancient bacteria. So find ancient bacteria on this chart. The picture above is an example of one type of ancient bacteria. And then if we look at the side, those green boxes, well, first it's going to tell us the name of the kingdom, the number of cells, does it have a nucleus, yes or no? Does it make its own food, or how does it get its food? And then, does it move from place to place? So if we look at ancient bacteria, let's read this chart. Kingston, how many cells do organisms in the ancient bacteria kingdom have? 1. Do those cells have a nucleus? No. How do they get their food? They make their own food. Or, Do they only make their own food? Do they only make their own food, Kingston? Or they get it from organisms. That means some bacteria may make its own food, some ancient bacteria may get it from somewhere else. And do they move? Yes, very good. Now bacteria. So ancient bacteria, what does the word ancient mean? Focus. What does the word ancient mean? Wow. This is the most boring thing ever. Nobody's even going to guess? Okay, I guess I'll just read. You can just sit there. Kingston. Old. Thank you for participating in the lesson. Everybody else is just staring. Not even at me. Old. So ancient bacteria is bacteria that was found a long, 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 long time ago. And then they started to realize this kingdom has too many organisms in it. So everything we find from now on is going to go in the non-ancient bacteria kingdom. So, regular bacteria, Zadie, how many cells does it have?
One or many.
Bacteria? One. Do those cells have a nucleus?
No.
How does bacteria get its food?
They make their own or get food from other
That means some makes its own, some gets its food from other organisms. Does it move?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, now we're in the protists, which we're going to read a little more about protists later. But how many cells do protists have? Cullen.
One or many.
One or many. Zari, what's your question?
Don't have a question, but Smith and I were trying to raise our hands, but you didn't see us. No, I mean for the question.
I don't know. I didn't see any hands, and I looked. I did not see any hands until after I said, wow, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but we're past that, so we don't need to worry about it anymore. So protists, it was Cullen. You said they have one or many cells. Do they have a nucleus?
Yes.
How do they get their food?
Make their own food or get food from their own organism.
Not from their own organisms.
From other organisms.
And do they move?
Yes.
Yes. When it says they get food from other organisms, that means they eat other organisms. Hey, fungi or fungi. Victoria, how many cells do they have? So some have one cell, some have many. Do they have a nucleus? How do they get their food? So, can any fungi make their own food? No, there's no fungi that can make their own food. They have to get it from other places. And do they move? Does fungi move? Nope, it does not. So these little mushrooms on the bottom of page 34, they cannot move from place to place. Aaron, what about plants? How many cells do they have?
Many.
All of them have many cells because we can see. We cannot see one-celled organisms. They're too tiny. But if it has many cells, sometimes we can see it, sometimes we can't. But plants we can usually see. Do those cells have a nucleus?
Yes.
How do they get their food?
They make their own.
So is any plant going to eat another organism to get food?
No.
No. And can they move? No, we know that because they have roots that stay in the ground. I mean, the wind may blow it, but the tree itself can't say, I'm going to move from here to here. And Kingston, you get to read about animals too. How many cells do they have? Do they have nucleus? How do they get their food? How do they get their food? They get it from other organisms. So do any animals make their own food? No. And can they move? Yes, we all know there's no animal that stays in one place. There are plants, there are fungi, but there are no animals, bacteria, protists, or ancient bacteria. So let's look at the difference. Let's just look at fungi and plants really quick, because a lot of us think, oh, when we see those mushrooms or that like algae or things like that, we think that it's a plant, but it's not. It's actually a fungi. What is the difference between plants and fungi? What is the difference between plants and fungi? Carla? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
The difference is they get food from other organisms.
Who does? Don't forget to be clear. You have to say who.
Fungus get
Fungi?
other food from other organisms.
And how is that different from plants? What do plants do?
They make their own food.
They make their own food. Other than that, they're pretty much the same. Other than there is some fungi that only has one cell. But other than that, most of it has many cells, just like plants. They both have nucleus in their cells. Neither of them move. But because fungi cannot make their own food and plants can, they are in a different kingdom. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the page. Now we're going to talk about how organisms are grouped. Zari, go ahead and read on page 36.
How are organisms grouped within a kingdom? Squirrels and lizards belong to animal kingdoms, even though they are very different.
What else do you think? What kingdom are we a part of, do you think? What kingdom do you think that we are a part of, human beings? What kingdom are we a part of? Are we part of ancient bacteria, protists, fungi, plants, or animals? Michaela? Animals. So, even though squirrels, lizards, and humans are very, very different, we all belong to the same kingdom. Does that mean we are exactly the same as a squirrel, lizard, or kingdom? No. That's why we classify even further. We sort them, put them into groups that are even smaller. But we start with the kingdoms, then we get smaller. Zari, keep going.
To further classify animals, scientists divide them into smaller groups.
Okay, so we start with, we're going to draw a diagram. So you're going to draw this with me in your book, in your text, in your notebook. So we start with, here's the title of our diagram. Classifying animals. We start with the kingdom. And here are, each one of these dots represents an animal. Do the dots, but please don't spend 175 years doing millions of dots. So we start with the kingdom. Zari, look at the top of this table that we have here and read to us about the kingdom that we are looking at right now.
Kingdom. Members of the animal kingdom move, eat food, and reproduce.
So these are all animals. Things like different kinds of squirrels, chipmunks. That looks like maybe it's a beaver, a cow, a bird, an insect. Here's all of those things. All different types of mammals, all different types of reptiles, birds, insects, amphibians, all living things that move, eat food, and reproduce. But that's so many. Now we have to narrow it down. So where do we go next? How do we narrow it down next? Zari.
Phylum.
Oh, read the paragraph first. The next group down.
Backbone.
Nope. Go to the back to the paragraph, sorry. And where it says the next group down is read that paragraph first.
The next group down is phylum.
No, there's a pronunciation key. It tells you how to say it. there you go.
Members of a phylum have at least one major trait in common, such as having a backbone.
Now go over to the chart, Zari, and read to us about phylum. Phylum.
Phylum. Members of the phylum share at least one major characteristic, such as having a backbone.
Good. So now we go to, I'm going to make my arrow shorter so that I actually have room. We go to the next group, which is the phylum. So what we're going to do is, out of all these animals, we're going to take everyone out that does not have a backbone. So we still have quite a few. You should be drawing and copying this diagram into your notebook. We still have quite a few, but not as many in the kingdom, because we took everyone out that did not have a backbone. So now we only have animals with backbones. And if you look at the pictures, we still have several different types of squirrels, a chipmunk, a beaver, a cow, and a bird, but now the insect is gone because it does not have a backbone. Okay, thank you for reading, Zari. Read next, Michaela. Read the paragraph next.
A phylum is a broken down. A phylum is broken down into smaller groups called classified.
Pause. No, not. What does that say?
Called classes.
Pause. So next we have classes. Or class. Read to us about class in the chart, Michaela.
Members of this class produce milk from their young.
Not from their young.
For their young.
So, we have this group of animals. We take all the animals out that do not provide milk for their young. So still a few, but not as many. And if we look at the pictures, again, we still have several types of squirrels, a chipmunk, a beaver, a cow, but the bird is gone because it does not provide milk for its young. Michaela, keep reading. Read that next sentence.
Each class has even smaller groups of orders.
So pause. So then we go to order and read to us about the order on that chart.
Members of this order have long and sharp front teeth.
So we took this group of animals here, and we took every animal out that did not have, what was it?
Long, sharp teeth.
Long, sharp teeth. So all that's left are animals with long, sharp teeth. Still some, but getting way less. Ooh. If we look back at the chart, we see we still have several types of squirrels. We have a chipmunk and we have a beaver, but the cow is gone because it does not have long, sharp teeth. Okay, Michaela, read that last sentence in the paragraph.
Orders have families.
So then we break it down even more into a family. Read to us, not a family like what you have at home, like with your mom and dad and brothers and sisters and grandma and whoever, but a family of animals. Read to us about this family on the chart, Michaela.
Members of this family have a bushy tail.
So, we took all of these animals and we got rid of all the ones that did not have a bushy tail. So now we have a few. If you look at the pictures, we still have the two types of squirrels and the chipmunk, but the beaver is gone because it has a long, flat, not hairy tail. I don't think it's smooth, but it's not hairy. Then what happens, Michaela?
You may read the next paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
The chart shows these groups from the largest to smallest. Each grouping has fewer and fewer members. The smaller groups, the more similar the organism in it are to each other. The smaller are the groups,
Read the pronunciation key. Are you looking at the pronunciation key? That's those letters in parentheses. So J-E-E. How would you say J-E-E? G. How would you say N-U-H-S? So put those sounds together, and you get genus.
Genus and species.
Look at the pronunciation key. How would you pronounce S-P-E-E? Is there an R? So exactly that, just without the R sound. Spe. S-E-E-Z. How would you say that? Sees. Spe. Sees. So what's that word? Species. So now it says as we go down the line, less and less animals or organisms are a part of it. The further we get down, the more alike they are. You'll notice that we're in the family. We have two types of squirrels and a chipmunk. Those are pretty similar, right? A lot of you may even confuse squirrels or chipmunks for the other. But then we go down even further to what comes next, Michaela? Genus. And what does it say about genus?
Members of this genus climb trees.
So we have to get rid of the chipmunk because it doesn't climb trees. Even though I'm pretty sure I've seen chipmunks climb trees, but maybe it's different. Maybe the way they climb trees is different, or maybe they only do it if threatened, or maybe I just saw a squirrel and thought it was a chipmunk. So now, if we look at those pictures, all we have left are two types of squirrels. Because the chipmunk can't climb trees, so it's gone. But then we narrow it down even further to what? Species. How did they narrow it down? So read to us about the species.
A species is made up of only one type of organism.
So a species is only one type of organism. So we have narrowed it down to where we are left with one organism in that group. Every single time they narrow it down to where they just have one organism in that group. In this case, we have a squirrel with a brown back and a white front. So that means that squirrel above that is black, that has a black back and a white front, is out of the group. It's in its own species. This last one can move, eat food, and reproduce. It has a backbone. It produces milk for its young. It has long, sharp front teeth. It has a bushy tail. It can climb trees. And it has a brown back and a white front. So that is how scientists classify animals. That is how they narrow them down. Okay, excellent. We have time for independent practice. Woohoo! Any questions about this table on page 37? Zari, do you have a question?
Now I see that they actually do a lot of work.
What? How scientists do a lot of
See
work?
that they do a lot of work.
They do, because look, they have to find a new organism and they have to figure out how to get it all the way down the line. But they can't just come in and automatically create a brand new one of these. They have to look at what's already there and figure out, well, does this new organism fit into any of those before we create a new one? So they can't just come up with something new until they get here. They have to find which already existing kingdom it fits in first. Then once they figure that out, they have to figure out what already existing phylum it fits in next. And then they have to figure out what class that already exists it fits in, and then what order it already fits in, and then what family it already fits in, and then what genus it already fits in. And then they can come up with something that's different from everything else and create a brand new species. Or not create, but name a brand new species. So it takes a lot of thought and a lot of research to get from here to here. So aren't you glad they already did it for us with this brown squirrel? The eastern red squirrel is a member of the animal kingdom. That is what they were showing us. How they got from here to here with the eastern red squirrel. So, any questions on this classification system? Okay, so that's all we have for the book, for reading of the book today. We do have time for the independent practice. So hold on one second and I will pass it out. So you should have this independent practice out or nearby. Smith, you do not have it printed because I hadn't sent it yet, but you do have it, so you can do it on the tablet.
Yeah, my dad's trying to find it on there right now.
Sorry, I sent it, I think it was, no, it's not, okay, yeah, so it was from yesterday. You got it? Awesome. So, this is one of those diagram sheets like what we did for homework last night. You'll see these quite often. It's helping you to learn how to read diagrams, charts, tables, things like that. So, look at page 35. Because this should look familiar. Look at page 35 in your science book. Look at page 35. Sometimes the quality of these diagrams is not so good because I'm copying it. But luckily on page 35, what do you see? Colin?
This diagram.
This same diagram. So take your pencil and either write above the diagram or right below, write page 35 so that if you forget where it is. Because sometimes you do have to look at the pictures that are on there. Sometimes you have to look at the words. Sometimes you have to look at how it's set up. Sometimes you need to read the information that's near that diagram in the textbook. So, what you're going to do is you're going to answer these questions about the chart. You're using this chart. There is a better version on page 35. So number 1, how are plants different from animals? Do not just pull information out of your head and say, well, I know that plants are green and animals usually aren't green. Is that information on this chart?
No.
No. You are using information from this chart to say how are plants different from animals. So are you going to list something that's the same about plants and animals? No, you're looking for something that's different. Number 2 says how are fungi different from other plants? How are fungi different from plants? Don't just pull something out like, oh, one time I touched fungi and it was slimy and I've never touched a slimy plant. Where is the information going to be?
In your book.
In your book or in the chart. Number 3, which kingdoms have organisms that can make their own food? They had a typo. I don't know why. This book has many typos in like the first couple pages and then none for the rest of the book. I don't know why. So it says, which kingdoms have organisms that can make their own food? Are you pulling that information out of nowhere? Or is it somewhere? Where can you look to find that information? It's right here. Or, if it's not right here, where else is it? In your book. In your book. Usually near that diagram. So, if you are answering the question, you're like, I see that information nowhere in the diagram. Where are you going to look?
In the book.
In the book. Especially right around that diagram. Okay. So, go ahead. That's your independent practice. You have 15 minutes. Write and complete sentences. What does that mean you need? What 4 things? Everybody stop and listen because I've said this like 18 times, but then people are like, I didn't know. And I literally said it 18 times. There are 4 things you need. What's the first thing you need? Michaela?
A capital letter.
A capital letter at the beginning. What do you need at the end? Carla?
A period.
A period. What other 2 things do you need? Victoria, what's one of them? What? Oh, well, there's 2 other things, and you should all know them. Colin?
Who or what?
Who or what this sentence is about, and what's the last thing you need? Kingston? Predicate. What's happening? Who or what, and what they're doing.